Hello everyone, I hope you're well. My name is Gary Waterman. I am a former UK police constable. I'm a Christian and a victim of this international government fraud. Now, what I'm going to do is show you the document and the research in relation to Julian Assange. I did try showing this in an interview the other day, but I couldn't get it sent to the person interviewing me, so I just tried to describe it. Hence me doing this video to show it in a little bit more detail. Now, this is now in a new public document file after my last one was hacked, which means I can't gain access. Very fortunately, all of the documents are backed up and secured by various people, and it's not going to go anywhere, but we need to get it out there. Now, I have tried my best with these documents. It's all done on my phone, so I apologise for the presentation. Pretty much all of the information can be verified and corroborated by anyone to see that it is true. So initially we're looking at Wikipedia research in relation to Julian Assange, and if you don't know who he is, I'm just going to read this first section to you. Julian Paul Assange, born in July 1971. Now that's very important in itself because the World Economic Forum was started that year. Okay, and the World Economic Forum appeared to be the public front to what is going on in relation to this international government fraud and the child trafficking. So he is an Australian editor, publisher and activist who founded WikiLeaks in 2006. Now, I've highlighted certain bits in this document, and that's because later in the document I've actually gone into detail and researched those specific names or companies and shown the connections to everything that I'm exposing. Reading on, he came to international attention in 2010 after WikiLeaks published a series of leaks from Chelsea Manning, a former United States Army intelligence analyst. This was in relation to footage of a US airstrike in Baghdad, US military logs from the Afghanistan and Iraqi wars, and US diplomatic cables. Assange has won multiple awards for publishing and journalism. On the right here, you can see various other information in relation to Julian Assange, and on the bottom there, very bottom on the right there, you can see that he was married, according to this, to Stella Assange in 2022, and that's very relevant in itself, as we'll come to later. Reading to the left there, in the box, he became involved... Oh, sorry. Just get that off. He became involved in the hacker community and was convicted of hacking in 1996, okay, 5 years before the World Trade Center disaster, which is all very relevant to what we're talking about here. But this shows that he's an expert in computers. Now, he founded a company, so that means he's very much likely knows exactly about Companies House and what constitutes a lawful record on Companies House. And when documents have been forged, etc. So that's just to highlight that he would know a lot about the computer systems, according to that. Reading on in the box below, in November 2010, Sweden issued a European arrest warrant for Assange for allegations of sexual assault. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. So here's a connection to Julian Assange with allegations being made to him in relation to sexual assault. Now, the sexual offences and child trafficking and adrenochrome and all the horrendous crimes against children link massively to the system of fraud that we're talking about throughout this document. On the right there, you can see in June 2024, as I'm exposing this evidence, Assange agreed to a plea deal with US prosecutors, and he was actually released from custody, and we're going to come to that in a bit later. His early life on the right there says that Assange was born as Julian Paul Hawkins in July 1971 in Queensland in Australia. He was born to Christine Ann Hawkins and to John Shipton. In 1979, his mother divorced and became involved with someone else who Julian Assange then claimed had been linked to a family, an Australian cult called the Family, and we're going to come to that in a bit. In 1993, on the left there, Assange provided technical advice and support to help the Victoria Police Child Exploitation Unit to prosecute individuals responsible for publishing and distributing child pornography. His lawyers said he was pleased to assist, emphasising that he received no benefit from this and was not an informer. His role in helping the police was discussed during a 1996 sentencing on computer hacking charges. According to his mother, Assange also helped police remove a book on the internet about how to build a bomb. Now, what I'm finding throughout my research is that people that are now, or had been and are speaking out about child trafficking are actually appearing to be linked to this international government fraud in some way, but they're not willing to talk about the fraud. Now, it is a massive conduit and vessel for international government fraud and child trafficking, okay, and they appear to be linked to it. But I think a big part of what we're seeing is the adrenochrome element, which is hidden more deeply within the research. And adrenochrome is blood taken from tortured children. It's the most lucrative substance on the planet. It apparently has rejuvenating effects, potentially reversing the aging cycle, and it is incredibly addictive according to the research as well. So we have an international drug trafficking link because the adrenochrome will be part of the drug trafficking network as well. And we'll come on to that a little bit later. Reading further down on the left, in the same year, he took over running one of the first public internet service providers in Australia called Suburbia Public Access Network when its original owner, Mark Dorset, moved to Sydney. Now, this is very important because the evidence links very closely to what appears to be a serious, imminent threat to humanity through radiation being emitted from mobile communication systems, including internet-based systems. And here we are, Julian Assange has a significant connection to Australia's internet service provider, and we'll come to that a little bit later. In 2015, Assange began a relationship with Stella. I won't read all of this, but he then, whilst he was in prison, he managed to marry managed to marry Stella Assange in 2022. Now, this is important because this is as I'm exposing my evidence, okay, in relation to this. And this was in Belmarsh Prison, and we'll come into that a little bit more later. Now, very importantly, you can see articles here. So before Julian Assange was released, Prince William attended the MI6 offices in London. And it wasn't long afterwards that Julian Assange was released. And I suspect that is very closely connected to what we're talking about. Prince William is knee-deep or neck-deep in this. You can see that he's been resigning from companies. He's got very significant connections to Dorset. In fact, I haven't said this before, but he was actually training at the Bovington camp, I believe, which is near Weymouth in Dorset. Okay, he was also, when I was in the police and we were on a night out with police officers, on a night out, I saw Prince William in that nightclub as well. Also, when I was policing an event in Dorset, this is all making sense now to me, Prince Charles landed in a helicopter, and one of my colleagues managed to get a lift in that helicopter whilst Prince Charles was at the event, because he was the prince at the time, not the king, managed to get a flight in that helicopter. And I thought all of this was very, very strange. It's now making sense. The monarchy have a huge connection to Dorset and the Fleming family, who are linked to this international government fraud and my company, or the company that I was part of, Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited. So this is all making sense. And they have links to MI6, okay, via the Fleming family. So here's some articles in relation to that. And I've just shown some articles in relation to the Julian Assange release, and you'll see some emails now that I'm going to show you. Remember, these articles 26th of June in relation to the release of Julian Assange, and here we are, an email on the 26th of June. That very day, I receive an email from somebody who I'd been directed to, who had connections to the Freemasons, multiple connections to the Freemasons, of a family that's very, very close to me, that I've got evidence about. And they directed me to a particular individual who had been involved in something called Operation Meadows. And in fact, let's go to that now. Let's have a look at that document now. So what I'm going to do is just show you some correspondence here. It's on a separate document, just so I can keep it separate. And it's screenshots taken from WhatsApp. I'm not going to disclose this person's name at the moment, but it's very, very close to me personally. And here we are. We have correspondence, screenshots taken. And on the right here, I've redacted it, okay, to protect this individual at the moment. And on the right, you can see there's correspondence in relation to the fraud that I'm uncovering, because this person was quite close to me in my life, so I was disclosing everything at this point to them. And on the right there, they start directing me to a particular group, and it says, might be worth sending your information to these guys. Now, these were a group of people, I'm going to come to in a minute, that were supposedly looking into helping victims of mortgage fraud in relation to Lloyds Bank. Now, through my inquiries, I'd acquired forged Lloyds Bank documents, okay, that appear to have been created by somebody on the Treasury Department of Lloyds Bank. So it's very relevant to this group of people. And this person was directing me to them. On the left there, later went on to, I tried to download that, okay, what we're looking at here, to confirm the image that they'd sent me, and it's failed. So it appears as though they've deleted it from their end. On the right there, they also started mentioning David Laity around the same time, a guy called David Laity, who was part of this group. So you had Trevor Meelan, David Laity, and Anthony Stansfield, who was a former police and crime commissioner. Now, I later found evidence linking the police and crime commissioner's office, which was an organisation on Companies House, to this international government fraud. On the left there, they try explaining to me that David Laity is an ex-CID officer, and they also mentioned, have I contacted the Financial Conduct Authority? Now, the Financial Conduct Authority are also linked to this international government fraud. In fact, a company dissolved called FCA Limited as I was exposing all of this. On the right there, they go on to say, I said, I have sent a message to Dave Laity on Twitter and through his Action for Justice, which was an organisation he was part of. I do, however, have a suspicion that he will be there to divert attention away from the police. So because of the connections I was making, I was already aware of how big this was becoming. Okay, so I highlighted that. They then go on later to say, don't forget to read the letter David Laity sent to Lloyd's. You can find it on the Bernician website. Okay, so I was being directed towards this group. They then had claimed that they had been a victim of the collapse of the system in 2008 in relation to property. So I tried to persuade them to also send their evidence to this group of people. They were highlighting this group of people. So this is correspondence just getting me to get them to try and also become or claim compensation in relation to them being victimized in relation to it. But I suspect all of this was a distraction, misdirection to the real problem, which was the forgery of the company registration systems by international governments and the banks producing forged bank documents for them, and the ability to defraud the masses through the taxation system in relation to it, and the connection to adrenochrome and the child trafficking, which is obviously horrendous. Now, on the left there, on the night, you can see the dates on all of this. On the 10th of October 2023, I'd sent them an article called Russian Dolls, the biggest scandal never revealed, or whatever. I can't remember what it's called there. But this linked to the Companies House fraud, and it was suggesting a Russian involvement. Okay, and I'd already started to find that and had discussions with this person who was very close to me, who I'm not disclosing who they are at the moment. And I sent this article to them. So this was on the 10th of October. Now, this is correspondence with somebody else, and these people that I was very close to had arranged a holiday for a 21st birthday. You can see it here. So this was prior to that last message, 21st of September 2023, you can see here. And this was just showing, to corroborate what I'm saying, there was a holiday booked, and we basically went to a cottage, which turned out to be very close to where my sister lived. I think that was deliberate. And on leaving this holiday cottage, okay, right by the door, they had placed, or somebody had placed, Russian dolls. You know, I'm sure everyone knows what they are, where they have little dolls going into each other. And somebody had stuck a face of Vladimir Putin on the Russian dolls. Okay, now I suspect that was an attempt to scare me, to prevent me from continuing with what I was doing. And there was various other things said. I later found significant evidence linking this to Russia. Okay, and they were trying to hide the connections to the international government fraud and child trafficking. So I suspect that was deliberate to scare me off. And then I do suspect that there was an attempt made on my life, trying to be made to look like a Russian connection. I mean, there's lots of, I've done a video about this. If you look at my Sunak evidence, Rishi Sunak evidence, you'll see that there was a glove that was left on the floor, and then I saw Russian, what appeared to be people speaking Russians, and there's lots more to that. But anyway, so in other words, there was a huge significant connection to Russia. Now, that group of people that I was being directed to was under the heading of Operation Meadows, and this is just showing a Google search of Operation Meadows. Now, just by searching Operation Meadows, it brings up now a connection. Look, you can see on the left, investigation concludes use of sedation on children at particular location. It was a criminal investigation into historical reports of excessive use of sedation on children. The second article you can see, and this was from 2020 and 2017, child abuse survivors reveals horrific treatment. So basically, Operation Meadows has already, the name Operation Meadow has already been given to child trafficking and concerns during investigations. On the right here, you can see that it was also given, when you type in Operation Meadows Lloyds Bank, it brings up other articles which relates to what I was trying to be directed to by these individuals who have connections to the Freemasons, remember. So here we are. This is just to confirm Operation Meadows was linked to this Lloyds Bank shareholder complaints, okay, in relation to Lloyds Bank. And here we've got some articles in relation to that at the time, okay? So you can see this is dated May 2022 on the bottom left here. Now, remember, I'm starting to uncover all of this in beginning of 2022, and I'm making various inquiries with my companies, trying to find out who was involved in it. Various meetings were being held, and I was building my evidence in relation to what had happened. And here we are, we suddenly have these articles, and it says, staff and shareholder complaints dominate Lloyd's AGM. The victims of historic fraud cases have called on the banking group to set aside $3 billion to remediate victims. This was from 2022, remember. On the right here, victims of one of UK's biggest banking frauds to be offered £3 million compensation. So this article was from 2022, and it's from The Guardian. And you can see you've got Noel Edmonds there, who's an entertainment celebrity. And it says, HBOS, now part of Lloyds Banking Group, was involved in the major fraud at its Reading branch in early 2000s. Okay, so this is an article. Now, I've got evidence linking all of the individuals that are supposedly helping these victims to this international government fraud and the forgery of Companies House registration systems through Companies House. This includes Noel Edmonds. Okay, it includes the individual that sent me that initial information, directed me to this group. It includes Trevor Meelan. It includes the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, and it includes David Laity. Okay, so this was all misdirection to try and send me in the wrong direction. So going on, here's what I'm going to show now is articles and correspondence in relation to myself and Trevor Meelan. And it's important to note that Trevor Meelan later became part of the Rapid Response Group and was supposedly involved in this group that were trying to stop unlawful evictions of people's homes. Now, I spoke to Trevor and said, look, you need to use this system of fraud that I'm uncovering. If a company is fraudulently registered, they're powerless. They cannot do anything legally at all. This includes bailiffs, banks, mortgage companies, debt companies, etc. Trevor Meelan refused to assist in exposing that, and we're going to look at some correspondence later in a minute in relation to it. So this is very important. I also had a conversation with Anthony Stansfield. He also didn't assist in exposing this international government fraud, which is key to everything we're talking about. But here's some articles. So back before we got to that point, as I'm in correspondence with Trevor, I find out and get sent various correspondence by him. And on the left here, you can see an article. It says 8 months ago, but it was actually longer than that because I had this screenshot secured for a while. And this was him supposedly at the European courts trying to take the UK government to court for crimes against humanity in relation to what he was doing. This victimization through Lloyds Bank. We basically had a conversation, and I said, well, what are you hoping to achieve by this? And he says, well, hopefully Priti Patel will step down. I don't think she was actually the Home Secretary at this point. So I'm thinking, okay, well, and I said to Trevor, they're just going to bring new people in. So what are you hoping to achieve? And he didn't really know how to answer that. And that's why this is now very clearly a system problem that they're all part of, because I find evidence linking Trevor, as I've said, the others that I'm talking about here, to this international government fraud, and they are refusing to assist me in exposing it, even though it's very powerful. So here's that article that he was at the European Convention of European Court, and on the right here you can see correspondence. So initially we'd given Trevor my wife's number when we were together. We've separated in relation to all of this. And it was this is a screenshot taken from WhatsApp in relation to correspondence between myself and Trevor. And he turns around and says, Gary, Op Meadow. Okay, so the thing he'd been dealing with The Guardian, with Trevor, with Anthony Stansfield and David Leahy, and Noel Edmonds, was, he says, the review for it was a false flag, leaked 33-page document. The idiot cop who oversaw it was DS Nicholas Johns. Now, I'm sorry to disclose all of... I have to... we've got children at risk here. I've got to disclose significant information to this. So I'd already started to establish that it was false. I'd already made comments, remember, that I suspect it was to hide the connection to the police. So they were panicking, I believe, and came on the back of it, and also then agreed it was a false flag. And he sent me some images there in relation to some casework and papers in relation to it. So this was, I believe, forcing them to also agree that it was a false flag. And on the left there, you can see, as I've said before, that Trevor was involved in unlawful evictions around the country under the Rapid Response Team banner. And you can see that Bannerman on the left there, you can see Bannerman was reporting on these rapid response situations of the unlawful evictions. And Bannerman later interviewed me, and it was a very dubious interview. It wasn't about my fraud, about showing the evidence in relation to the fraud. It was about, am I a Freemason? And trying to establish if I was connected to the Freemasons, which I never have been. And that means I can talk about this and expose everything I'm acquiring. So on the right here, I'm just going to show you correspondence between myself and Trevor Meelam. I've obviously redacted his number, but I've got that on the document if needed. And this is just showing correspondence between them. And he's trying to dissuade me away from this. And you can see on the right there, he says, Gary, not all companies, this was on the 24th of March 2024, not all companies that have off-the-shelf have an off-the-shelf originated from Finchley Road, which is an address linked to the international government fraud at this point. This has already been linked and connected by somebody called Gordon Bowden, who information suggests was actually murdered over all of this. He goes on to say, I have one that was transferred over. Now, remember, I've said I've already got connections of him linked to the fraud. And he says, I have one that was transferred over and had sat dormant for years. Didn't even know it had come from there, but took over to make live to put in court papers against a senior Lloyds Bank director used as a buffer. He then later went on to give me Laura Nina's number. For those who don't know who Laura Nina is a social media platform person. Don't know, the word's gone out of my head. So she was basically trying to highlight government corruption, but she has refused to assist me in exposing this fraud as well. Okay, it's very clear. And in fact, all she's been trying to do is undermine, criticise me, and cause problems for the evidence that I'm exposing. So we now have a link. She was also part of the rapid response teams. I later then received information that she may be linked to the Sicilian Mafia and was leaking information that she was acquiring through this social media connection to Donna Jones, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner for Hampshire and Isle of Wight. Now, that is very, very significant because, remember, Dorset is right next to Hampshire. The Police and Crime, the Chief Constable, Scott Chilton, and the Deputy Chief Constable, Sam De Rea, were moved after my inquiries were progressing to the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Police. Okay, so they were moved from Dorset Police to there. Sam De Rea had been overseeing the Economic Crime Unit where I was reporting my fraud within Dorset Police, okay, who later went on and they sent 2 emails confirming inadvertently that they were allowing forged bank documents to be produced by Lloyds Bank and used in circulation. They also leaked information to a prime suspect who was from the Fleming family, who I'd already named in an email. Though one of those prime suspects was a chief executive for the NHS in charge of a £700 million budget and 10,000 staff for Hampshire and Isle of Wight and Dorset. Okay, so this is very significant because remember, it ties in with the information I'm telling you. So I continue to send Trevor Meelam all of my evidence on WhatsApp. You can see here I've just redacted some names. So I'm just talking about specifics in relation to the fraud, the linking to MI6, fraud, child trafficking, politicians and their advisors, and the World Trade Center disaster. And I've got irrefutable evidence of all of this, and I'm sending it to Trevor, and he says, I don't do COVID or vaccines. Okay. Reading on the correspondence, I then send further evidence to him. So you can see this is on the left there. We're looking 20th of April 2024. I send further evidence now, and this is in relation to, I believe I'm now getting the adrenochrome evidence. So adrenochrome is a massive factor in what we're talking about here. And he says, I only do banking frauds. Hold on a minute. Trevor, you've got a platform, you've got connections to David Laity, to a former police and crime commissioner. We're talking about the torture of children here for their blood, and abuse and murder and international government crime through the taxation system, victimising millions. It's also linked to a depopulation report. So I put, oh dear Trevor. He then goes on to say, why? I prefer deep and wide rather than all and everything. Yeah, okay. Further correspondence here. I send, this is definitely, you can see I've highlighted, I send the adrenochrome evidence to Trevor, and he says, I only do SME, banking frauds, and follow rapid response eviction blocks and takes backs. Oh dear, oh dear. So I become, and I shouldn't have said this, and I apologise, Trevor. I misspelt it, but I put later, you are a disgrace, Trevor. He then tried calling me, left me messages. And because of all the connections I was finding, I released a little bit of information. So in relation to Laura Nina, here is the redacted information that I had. You can read that. Now, this is, I'm not saying this is true, okay? I'm just showing you information that I have, suggesting she was going under a different name, and that name was linked to the Sicilian Mafia, and she was leaking information to Donna Jones. And here's some other information in the middle here, some other links and people that had concerns about her and why. And then when you research that name, now she's tried to cover this up. It certainly appeared to be trying to cover it up. On the right here, if you search the name Loredana Menino that she was supposedly using, according to this information I had, just in Companies House. So you put that Loredana Menino Companies House on Google. Okay, because you can get different searches by going in through a platform search, a search engine, or you go in through Companies House itself. And it linked to Daniela Menino came up. When you go into Daniela Menino, it then linked back into everything I was talking about. Significant companies made simple. And I've got all of that evidence secured. And also to Finchley Road, the address that we've been mentioning, which also links to Trevor Meelan as well, and the international government fraud. Okay, but when Laura Nina did a video, she went into, and hopefully many of you saw this, she went into Companies House and did the search on this name instead of Google, and that of course didn't bring up what I was finding, so she tried to undermine my evidence with that. Now what we've got is the correspondence that I've mentioned within the other document. Okay, so we're going to come to that in a minute. In fact, we'll come on to it now. Just do a little bit of this. So I was directed via Trevor Meelan. I then was directed to this person who sent me these emails via Trevor Meelan. Now, this person also links to the international government fraud, and very, very quickly to Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited, the company that I was part of. And so does David Laity. Okay, they link very quickly to Exmoor Manor Freehold Limited, where I acquired the forged bank documents. So this person on the 26th, okay, the very same day of these articles that Julian Assange was released, this person sends me an email with correspondence directly from, or through them, from Stella Assange. Okay, so I'm just showing you that now. So now we have a link to Julian Assange via Stella to everything that I've already talked about, the international government fraud, and look how relevant this becomes. So here it's just Stella Assange saying, excellent news, Julian is free. He flew to Australia on Monday this week. The details are given in the video at the foot of this email. There's various articles attached to information, including this, which shows a picture of Julian on a plane with his... Sorry, the red boxes have moved, actually, since I've done this. But never mind, you'll get the idea of it. Jennifer Robinson. So we come on to her later and research her. She links very quickly to Julian Assange and therefore to the Madeleine McCann case. So I respond to this email. Obviously, I'm thinking, wow, this is fantastic. I've now got contact with Stella Assange. Julian and Stella will assist me in exposing this international government fraud. That's what they're all about. Exposing the government, obviously, according to what their past says. So I then respond directly to Stella with my mobile number, which I've redacted, saying, please contact me. It'll be great. Help me expose this, etc. Around the same time, 28th of July 2024, on the right, you see I receive an email from somebody else saying that Julian Assange may be linked to a cult family, which is linked to MK Ultra. Okay, now I'd already found connections to MK Ultra, linking back to David Cameron, who became the Foreign Secretary. So MK Ultra, those of you who don't know what it is, it's a decades-old government intelligence-led experimentation against the public through pharmaceuticals, subliminal messages, and also radiation to try and influence the public to their thought process, and also potentially getting them to carry out things and do things they wouldn't normally. This includes assassination attempts. Okay, so this all ties in, I believe, to what we're seeing, and is very likely linked to the stabbings with different faith groups. The technology suggests they can actually force people to do things that they wouldn't. Now, why would they do that? To turn the faith groups against each other, to fight against each other, to ultimately destroy religion. Now, that's almost half an hour in, so what we're going to do is do part 2.